I'm about to unleash about Shedeur Sanders. I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
The Cleveland Browns are once again mishandling a promising quarterback. Skip Bayless criticized the organization for failing to develop Shedeur Sanders and for misusing his skill set. He argued that the team's decisions are undermining Sanders' progress and turning a major investment into a cautionary example. Bayless pointed to inconsistent usage, questionable play calling, and a lack of clear direction as key issues limiting Sanders. He said the Browns need a defined development plan and stronger support if they expect Sanders to succeed. Skip Bayless delivered a direct, critical assessment this week. After seeing Shedeur Sanders in a Browns uniform, he argued that Cleveland is mishandling the quarterback and undermining his development. Bayless said the team's approach shows poor planning and inadequate support around Sanders. He dismissed excuses about strategy and emphasized the need for better coaching, deployment, and protection. In his view, the Browns are setting themselves up for problems before the season begins unless they establish a clear plan for Sanders. Given the team's recent decisions, his reaction is understandable. Cleveland has a history of inconsistent quarterback development. Shedeur Sanders is a premium prospect, the son of a Hall of Famer, a proven college performer, and a widely recognized figure. The organization should prioritize his reps, protection, and a clear development plan, not place him behind Dillon Gabriel as if he were a secondary option.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders, and I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it. Okay. Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start line, and he hasn't had any reps for the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice.
Yet here we are. Cleveland has one of the most publicized prospects and is handling him like a depth piece. The broader issue is the franchise's long record of quarterback instability and inconsistent development. That history colors every move they make. When the Browns draft a quarterback, fans don't anticipate a long-term answer. They brace for another reset. Shedeur Sanders should be treated as a priority, not as an afterthought behind Dillon Gabriel.
Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well. So what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job, in this instance, Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill?
When Browns fans see another quarterback selected, they brace for another setback. The franchise's recent history, from Johnny Manziel's failed stint to the rocky handling of Baker Mayfield, reflects inconsistent development and short-term decision-making. Against that backdrop, Skip Bayless's reaction to Shedeur Sanders on Cleveland's roster was blunt. He argued the team is already mishandling a premium prospect by treating him as a secondary option instead of a centerpiece for the future. Bayless's position is straightforward. Sanders is not just a name, he brings proven college production, leadership traits, and significant visibility that can strengthen both the offense and the organization's broader profile. Burying him on the depth chart behind Dillon Gabriel signals a lack of a clear development plan and wastes early momentum. Instead, Bayless contends, Cleveland should establish a defined pathway. First-team practice reps, protection and personnel tailored to his strengths, deliberate play calling that accelerates processing, and measured in-game opportunities that build confidence and execution. In his view, the Browns need alignment from the front office to the coaching staff to prioritize Sanders' growth. Continuing to treat him like a depth piece risks repeating the same cycle that has undermined previous quarterbacks. Committing to a coherent plan gives Sanders and the franchise a realistic chance to convert potential into sustained performance.
Urban Meyer's roster history underscores the absurdity. Meyer coached Aaron Hernandez, whose off-field crimes are well documented, along with other players entangled in assaults, academic misconduct, and more. Yet Feinbaum singled out Newton, a national champion, Heisman Trophy winner, and NFL MVP, as the worst. This selective condemnation is not new. When Deion Sanders recently suggested implementing an NIL salary cap to restore competitive balance, Feinbaum dismissed the proposal and called Sanders a hypocrite rather than engage with the substance. The pattern repeats. Feinbaum routinely targets Cam Newton, Deion Sanders, Jameis Winston, Lamar Jackson, outspoken black athletes and coaches, while extending grace to figures such as Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, or Tim Tebow under similar circumstances.
Newton is no longer content to remain silent while others distort his story. In response, he laid out an accurate chronology, highlighting facts the commentary networks rarely repeat. One long-standing myth is that Newton was expelled from the University of Florida. He was not. Tim Tebow held the starting job unchallenged, and Meyer had no intention of displacing his star. Like thousands of athletes each year, Newton transferred to find a place where he could play. The move was strategic, not disciplinary. He is with 3-2-2-5-3-17 to transfer to and Moorbeck. Meyer was.
Critics habitually resurrect the 2008 laptop incident to tarnish Newton's entire career. Newton has acknowledged the mistake, but its relevance is overstated. The incident did not prompt his transfer, nor did it derail his trajectory. After leaving Florida, Newton enrolled at Blinn College, a Texas JUCO powerhouse, and led the Buccaneers to a national championship while posting dominant statistics. That performance earned him the opportunity to transfer to Auburn. At Auburn, Newton produced one of the most extraordinary single seasons in collegiate history. More than 4,000 yards of total offense, 50 combined touchdowns, an SEC title, a national championship, and the Heisman Trophy. Achievement compressed into a single year under intense scrutiny. Even that landmark season is recast by Feinbaum as a cautionary tale. He claims Newton ignored head coach Gene Chizik by diving for a goal line touchdown when told to kneel, jeopardizing the game. In reality, Newton explained that the decision was a collective adjustment made in the huddle after reading the defense. While Auburn still held timeouts, the Tigers maintained control and secured the championship. Portraying that moment as reckless serves to recast Newton's success as selfishness rather than leadership.
Feinbaum's approach to Sanders reflects the same dynamic. When Sanders urged a structured NIL ceiling to protect athletes and stabilize rosters, Feinbaum immediately labeled him hypocritical. Yet when Saban or Swinney voice identical concerns, Feinbaum frames them as thoughtful guardians of the sport. The inconsistency reveals that the determining factor is not the argument but the identity of the speaker. Unapologetic black leaders who control their narratives, challenge entrenched hierarchies, and Feinbaum's commentary often functions as a check on that influence. Newton countered Feinbaum's latest attack with a concise statement. "You're lying, Paul. Please stop." Behind those words lay a broader indictment of the media machinery that weaponizes half-truths. By calling Newton the worst player Meyer coached, Feinbaum was seeding doubt among fans, front office evaluators, and future historians. Newton, now an established media presence and entrepreneur, no longer depends on traditional outlets to correct the record. He reminded audiences of three essential truths. He departed Florida on his own terms, he led Auburn with support from coaches and teammates, and he captured every major accolade available in college and professional football without conforming to prescribed expectations. An unspoken rule lingers in American sports discourse. Black athletes may excel, but must do so quietly, gratefully, and without highlighting systemic inequities. Newton broke that expectation early by celebrating with unreserved joy, answering questions candidly, and refusing to minimize his personality. For some commentators, that confidence is reinterpreted as arrogance. Feinbaum's repeated attempts to undermine Newton follow a familiar script of policing behavior rather than analyzing performance. Yet, legacy rests not in a pundit's soundbite, but in tangible achievements and public memory. Newton's resume, Heisman winner, national champion, NFL MVP, speaks for itself. Millions of fans witnessed his impact on Saturdays and Sundays. Countless young quarterbacks saw someone who looked like them redefine the position's possibilities. The same is true for Sanders, whose player-first coaching philosophy and media savvy continue to influence college football's direction.
Feinbaum's commentary cannot erase these realities. Newton, Sanders, Winston, Jackson, and others have already secured their places in football history. By publicly confronting misinformation, Newton set a precedent for athletes who now possess the platforms and technology to present their stories unfiltered. The microphone no longer belongs exclusively to legacy broadcasters. Newton holds it now, and he intends to keep it. A decisive shift that reduces the gatekeeper's influence and ensures that accomplishments are judged on merit rather than narrative manipulation. Rich Eisen addressed the armchair analysts and online critics head-on. Shedeur Sanders just received his opportunity, and the backlash arrived immediately. Eisen responded with a clear, point-by-point case explaining why the criticism misses the mark. If you thought Shedeur's rise was rapid, Eisen's analysis puts it in proper context. Here's what he laid out on air.
Already speaking in Cleveland high schools.
Weekend after, flying out immediately to get to work.
But his character's terrible, right? You know, and listen, oh, he interviewed bad, you know, according to who? The New York Giants? No offense, Bert. The same New York Giants that gave Daniel Jones a huge contract and let Saquon Barkley out the door, that's the intel we're trusting here?
That was for him to celebrate. He just made, I mean, look, he put in work in college. He had the privilege of being coached by his father,
which we all would love and choose.
Turned around not one, but two programs in college football. And then literally for any athlete, being drafted at the highest level is a success story in itself.
Rich Eisen delivered a direct response to the critics. He addressed the online claims reducing Shedeur Sanders to Deion Sanders' son instead of evaluating him as a quarterback on merit. Eisen challenged those assumptions and refocused the discussion on performance, preparation, and opportunity.
Say Kenny Pickett had strained his hamstring. Shedeur, they say his first day in pass, 9 for 9, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Really was just hating on this young guy.
Within minutes, Rich Eisen delivered a structured breakdown, addressing each claim with evidence and dismantling weak narratives through clear analysis. He replaced speculation with data and kept the focus on what matters: decision-making, accuracy, leadership, preparation, and game management. The reality is simple. Shedeur Sanders was not given this opportunity. He earned it through performance and consistency against real competition. He accepted the role, met the standard, and handled the moment with professionalism and urgency. No shortcuts, no favors, just results and readiness. Eisen's point was direct. Evaluate Shedeur on his work, not assumptions, and acknowledge that he has justified the opportunity on the field.
I've done it at 2 locations already, so it's simple. So that's why when people say I'm not, you know, one of the top quarterbacks or the top quarterback, is what are y'all going based off of? Because I did it year after year after year, and you see the progression. So it's like, obviously it got to be some type of external hate that you have for the family, for the last name, for anything, because I know I proved myself.
While many were still debating whether he was NFL ready, Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the practice field and operated like a clear QB1, setting protections, controlling tempo, and executing the plan. The narrative that he is just flash, media attention, or his father's influence does not hold up against his work in installs, progressions, and situational drills. What he showed was composure, efficiency, and command of the offense. He processed quickly, protected the football, and delivered on-time throws, demonstrating preparation and control.
I'm a firm believer. If I wanted Shedeur Sanders at 2, at worst at 33, of course I already think that he's better than the other quarterbacks. Because that's the type of talent, that's where I would have picked him at. And if he was at 2 or 33, and he still had this same exact skill set, we would be talking about him starting and playing.
Right. Well, there'd only be 3 quarterbacks.
It'd be 3 quarterbacks, not 4.
Yeah.
But since he moved to the 5th round, that's cool. They might have to go along with it. But to me, I think if you ask who got the best tools, I'm going with Shedeur Sanders.
From the first day of camp, he was not there to get by. He arrived to lead. There was no hesitation in installs, no lapses in fundamentals, just precise timing, clean footwork, and consistent velocity to every level of the field. He managed protections, controlled cadence, and delivered in situational work, showing command rather than learning on the fly. The approach was efficient and disciplined, with attention to detail and progressions and ball placement that reflected preparation, not improvisation. At the same time, Rich Eisen addressed the narrative directly and backed it with evidence. He laid out clips, context, and performance markers to cut through speculation. Eisen emphasized that Shedeur Sanders did not step into this moment because of publicity. He built toward it through sustained work, resilience, and results. The background, media readiness, high football IQ, and a professional approach was developed over years, not days, and it translated to immediate operational control of the offense. The resistance came from familiar places. Some in the traditional guard still framed mobile quarterbacks as limited and expected the nepotism label to define him. That view did not
not hold up against what was on the field. Composure under pressure, secure decision-making, accurate throws into tight windows, and consistent execution in red zone and 2-minute sequences. Eisen's point was clear. Evaluate Shedeur Sanders on performance and readiness. The evidence shows he earned the opportunity and is meeting the standard with accountability and consistency.
Yeah, teams didn't draft him because they didn't think he was first-round talent. And the quote we played and that's on the screen, I think is flatly wrong. We all know this shouldn't have happened. Yes, it should have. It should have happened because this wasn't. Now, again, teams can be wrong. The league as a whole can be wrong. Hell, the Baltimore Ravens drafted a 25-year-old tight end before they drafted Lamar Jackson in the same draft. The die is not cast on who Shedeur Sanders.
He stated it plainly. This is not a celebrity appearance. This is a quarterback with pocket presence, leadership, and decision-making that stands on its own. You either show it or you settle into a backup role. Shedeur Sanders is not auditioning. He is establishing himself as the starter. When the opportunity arrived, whether through injury, trade, or depth chart changes, Shedeur was prepared and delivered. He did not hesitate. He executed the offense and finished drives. As others tried to catch up to what they were seeing, Rich Eisen reinforced the same message he has been repeating. Evaluate the work. Camp reports have been consistently positive, but the important shift is how the performance is being received. Casual attendees who came to observe left talking about Shedeur's command and poise. Detailed observers focused on his pre-snap reads, protection checks, and audibles, highlighting the mechanics, timing, and ball placement that support efficient, controlled play.
What do you think is happening in Browns camp? What do you think is going to happen there before I let you go, Lewis?
You know, I think it really does all depend on how Kevin is able to, as it relates to Shedeur, work him in enough. Well, one, Shedeur has to earn the right for Kevin and the staff to have discussions about, hey, we got to get him more reps with the ones and twos. We got to get him more reps with the ones and twos when we're going team period, not just walk through or not just 7-on-7 team.
Louis Riddick reacted sharply on air after viewing practice footage from the Cleveland Browns. The clip showed quarterback Shedeur Sanders executing a string of precise throws while the Browns head coach watched with a broad smile. Riddick questioned whether the session was focused on evaluation or celebration, arguing that visible enthusiasm from the staff could cloud objective assessment of a rookie's progress. Earlier in the segment, Riddick's tone had been measured once the Sanders highlights appeared. He criticized the perception that a routine practice was being treated like a marquee event. He stressed that coaching reactions should remain subdued until performance translates into game situations. Riddick concluded by calling for accountability and asking the Browns to clarify how they plan to manage expectations for Shedeur Sanders as training camp continues.
Couldn't imagine me myself saying, hey, you know what, as someone who has been at the very bottom to try and ascend to like some level of success, I could never imagine going, you know what would be really cool? I'm gonna play a joke on someone like this and make pretend that I'm a GM and I'm drafting you when actually I'm not, and then I'm gonna hang up and just giggle about it. Man, what the hell are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing when we think that that kind of crap is funny?
I don't know. Trying to get likes on TikTok.
I don't have the right words for it.
Right, Lewis, I'm gonna say this.
I don't have the right words for it.
Few situations unsettle a former front office executive faster than watching coaches celebrate a rookie quarterback before pads come on in August. In Louis Riddick's view, the Browns staff did more than acknowledge promise. They acted as though they had already secured their franchise leader. Throughout the session, Shedeur Sanders delivered 40-yard throws off his back foot, ran crisp 2-minute drills, and displayed steadiness rare for a first-year player. According to reports, each successful rep drew audible admiration from the sideline, highlighting how quickly enthusiasm has escalated. When Riddick reviewed the same practice tape and heard the glowing comments, he challenged the reaction on live television. He argued that a few controlled drills should not override the methodical scouting and development work that normally guides roster decisions. Riddick's criticism focused less on Sanders' talent than on the evaluation process. He warned that comparing a prospect to established stars or joking about renaming the stadium creates pressure before the player has taken an NFL hit, faced a disguised coverage, or logged a preseason snap. Praising potential is acceptable, he said, but anointing a savior in July risks repeating the organization's history of premature quarterback expectations. Sanders brings confidence shaped by his father's legacy and his own disciplined preparation, yet Riddick insists that progress must be confirmed over time. He urged the Browns to temper public excitement, follow a structured development plan, and reserve celebratory reactions for on-field results that matter. Regular season production under live pressure, not highlight clips from a midsummer workout.
He has to earn that. Kevin has to figure out a way to do that. So then you can reasonably assess what you have in him compared to Dylan Gabriel, compared to Kenny, compared to Joe Flacco. If you don't, then the conversation surrounding him is going to continue to be what it's been, which is, but for some people, he was overhyped all along. He's not that great of an athlete, doesn't have a big enough arm. There's a reason why he was a 5th round pick, blah, 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 which I don't believe. I believe if he is given enough reps, earns enough reps, and then is given enough reps in meaningful situations, he can throw the ball just as good as Joe, if not better, just as good as Kenny, if not better, just as good as Dylan Gabriel.
After more than 2 decades in personnel and broadcast analysis, Louis Riddick was dismayed to see a franchise bypass basic evaluation standards after only a series of eye-catching minicamp throws. Reviewing practice footage from Cleveland, he observed Shedeur Sanders drilling 40-yard passes against uncovered receivers and running 2-minute sequences with poise. In Riddick's view, those reps, conducted without pads, contact, or a disguised rush, show arm talent but reveal little about how a rookie handles game pressure. Riddick said the Browns' reaction drifted from objective assessment to outright admiration. Multiple reports indicated coaches were sketching new concepts for Sanders during dinner and referring to dedicated Shedeur packages well before a padded practice. Even the veterans in the quarterback room showed no visible alarm, a sign that staff excitement had already reset the internal depth chart conversation. The analyst emphasized that his concern is not Sanders' skill set. He acknowledged the quarterback's arm strength, footwork, and composure, but rather how quickly the club appears willing to declare him its long-term answer. Riddick cited several past prospects who received similar midsummer acclaim only to stall once real competition began. Given Cleveland's long history of quarterback turnover, he argued the organization should focus on incremental milestones, processing post-snap reads, surviving live pass rushes, and rebounding from mistakes on Sunday afternoons. Riddick urged the Browns to temper expectations and follow a structured development plan so Shedeur Sanders can progress without undue pressure. One coach reportedly admitted he replayed Tuesday's scrimmage film so often that he lost sleep, an anecdote Riddick offered as proof that enthusiasm is already outpacing reality.
All asking now is what is going on with Shedeur Sanders, and so the floor is yours. Maybe you can make sense of this free fall with what was at one point the top-rated quarterback in this draft class.
Yeah, see, I think at this point in time, this really isn't a football discussion any longer. This is a personal discussion. This is about it's a fit discussion. It's whether or not teams are just comfortable with everything that comes along with Shedeur in terms of who he is as a person, all the people that are surrounding him in terms of his inner circle, and whether or not teams deem that to be something that they're comfortable with. Right or wrong, that's the only conclusion you can really come to at this point.
Louis Riddick voiced an escalating concern during the segment. Having witnessed numerous quarterback setbacks in his career, he worries another may be forming, not because Shedeur Sanders lacks talent, but because the praise around him is growing without restraint. Sanders has simply attended practice, delivered accurate passes, led the huddle, and shown the composure expected of an NFL player. Riddick fears the Browns' reaction, treating routine drills as proof of long-term success, risks setting premature expectations. He cautioned that the organization seems ready to celebrate a franchise savior before Sanders has taken a competitive snap, noting that such early adulation has derailed promising prospects in the past and could impede Sanders' measured development.
Watson says he has been mentoring Shedeur Sanders at the quarterback position. The biggest failure in the NFL is now mentoring quarterbacks. The most overpaid underdeliverer at the position is now mentoring 2 rookie QBs and a Super Bowl champ. So what exactly are you mentoring him at? You have had 24 civil lawsuits that you paid off to go away. And when you play, you are as ass as those massage therapists are, apparently. Shedeur Sanders is also a show. It's all about him. It's all about anything else. If you don't see that by now, then you're just blinded.
Cleveland's second most talked about player has yet to take a professional snap, and it isn't Deshaun Watson. Rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders has already captured the locker room's attention and the fan base's enthusiasm, creating a visible shift in the team's internal dynamics. Watson, once the uncontested focal point, now shares the spotlight with a newcomer who has only practiced in shorts. The Browns are experiencing a rapid, unforeseen change in popularity within their roster.
Four-man competition. It's not. It's two guys versus two guys. It's the two older guys to be the starter.
Yeah.
It's the two younger guys to position themselves however it may be.
Right.
Show little improvement every single day, right? So, of all the things I'm watching the first five when they break a session, the first five with the veterans, with the ones. Who's in there, where are they going? The ball's going to Jerry Judy, right? Flacco's no dummy, lasts as long as he has, right? He can really whiz it. But as we go on, I want to watch these guys because they probably just got plays installed Tuesday and they're out there running them Wednesday.
Shedeur Sanders arrived in Cleveland and immediately commanded attention. The rookie has yet to take a preseason snap, yet the energy around him inside the building and across social media eclipses what many veterans receive in an entire season. Fan enthusiasm is so strong that Deshaun Watson's jerseys are already drifting toward the clearance rack at the team store. In a matter of days, Sanders has become the roster's second most popular figure, while Watson watches his once secure QB1 status and public approval shrink by the hour.
Shedeur or Deshaun? Who do you want as your quarterback next year?
Honestly, Shedeur. I love Deshaun though. Like, I don't understand all the hate for Deshaun. You get hurt and you get booed, bro. That's foul. That might be the foulest I ever seen.
The Browns' social media staff posted a single candid photo of rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders releasing a warm-up throw, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Fans saturated timelines with edits of themselves alongside him, while Deshaun Watson's routine practice reps drew comparatively little notice. Although an official Sanders jersey has not been released, unauthorized versions are already moving at a pace that exceeds merchandise sales for several other AFC North teams. The surge in interest marks one of the most intense fan reactions Cleveland has experienced in recent memory. The excitement surrounding Shedeur also triggers a wave of criticism. Veteran analysts, anchored in a 1980s mindset, question whether his style will translate into lasting success. They focus on his NIL earnings, social media presence, and visible confidence, arguing that the image overshadows substance. To them, outward self-assurance appears to be a distraction rather than a competitive asset. Even a simple smile or brief display of personality is cited as evidence that he lacks the measured discipline they expect from a starting quarterback. Critics claim Shedeur Sanders is notable only because of his father overlooking the performance he delivered at Colorado. Many of those same observers ignored the Buffaloes until Deion Sanders made national headlines, yet they now question whether his son has earned the attention. They want rookies to keep quiet, carry clipboards, and wait 2 seasons before challenging for a starting role. Sanders is disregarding that script from the moment he arrived. His presence has already turned Cleveland's quarterback discussion into a genuine two-man competition before a single preseason snap. Deshaun Watson maintains publicly that the situation does not concern him, but it is hard to believe the pressure is not real. A fully guaranteed contract protects his paycheck, not his standing in the locker room. Sanders, meanwhile, is translating charisma and early momentum into tangible influence with teammates, coaches, and fans, reshaping expectations for who will lead the Browns on opening day.
I'm a firm believer. If I wanted Shedeur Sanders at 2, at worst at 33, of course I already think that he's better than other quarterbacks. Because that's the type of talent, that's where I would have picked him at. And if he was at 2 or 33, and he still had this same exact skill set, we will be talking about him starting and playing.
Right. Well, there'd only be 3 quarterbacks.
It'll be 3 quarterbacks, not 4.
4, yeah.
But since he moved to the 5th round, that's cool. They might have to go along with it. But to me, I think if you ask who got the best tools, I'm going with Shedeur.
Shedeur Sanders has not taken a single professional snap, yet discussion about him has split NFL social media into 2 camps. One side already argues he should start immediately. The other worries about what that means for veteran quarterbacks like Deshaun Watson. Reporters now line the perimeter of Browns camp, scrutinizing every inconsistency in Watson's spiral and every precise throw from Sanders during drills. Each well-placed pass is clipped, posted to TikTok, and captioned as evidence of a future QB1. Cleveland is no stranger to quarterback drama, but this situation is different.
different. Rather than cycling through another unproven starter, the franchise is dealing with a rookie who entered with more polish, public attention, and perceived readiness than most first-year players. Fans chant Sanders' name before he has appeared in a preseason game, while the established starter works to maintain his relevance. The atmosphere is not yet a full controversy, it is a countdown. Traditional analysts insist on the importance of experience and respecting the process, yet Sanders is progressing on the timeline set by the supporters who already view him as the next leader of the offense.
Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Browns training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone periods. The throws were varied, a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure. While national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work, with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants, while other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across
across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines. It was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed Week 1 starter with sufficient continuity while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations. High red zone, low red zone, 3rd and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Barry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines further. Install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a 3rd down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align. Efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear, side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same. What more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation.
You first, when you take a look at both of these QBs, who had the most impressive start so far in the preseason?
Well, to me, it was Shedeur. I didn't see any interceptions when he was out there. Didn't see anything like that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dylan Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother. but I'm going to go with Shedeur. You know, the pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just call out Dillon Gabriel. He held him accountable and made him rethink his comments. The moment Dillon Gabriel spoke and went after Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't a minor slip. He crossed the line and stepped directly into Stephen A. Smith's wheelhouse. And Smith answered with a clear, direct response that left no room for misinterpretation.
The comparisons were emanating from the media more so than anybody else. And that's what I think, that's exactly who I think he was directing his comments towards. Having said that, Dillon Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field.
This wasn't casual sports commentary, it was a decisive critique. Dillon Gabriel's comments were taken apart by Stephen A. Smith with clear, direct points. Gabriel, a quarterback with solid stats but limited top-level achievements, chose to take a public shot at Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, who has handled sustained media scrutiny and on-field expectations, became the target of an unnecessary criticism. Smith responded by challenging Gabriel's standing to make that claim, and by defending Sanders on the facts. The outcome was clear. Gabriel overreached, and Sanders didn't deserve the hit.
Only Dan Orlovsky would sit up here in comparison to Shedeur Sanders, who did no such thing, and say, hey, thought he looked better. I thought, I got to give him the edge here. I thought it wasn't bad. A pick six and a fumble, and we can get over fumbles. Have you heard anybody say that? I know it's possible. Have you ever heard anybody say, we get over?
Stephen A. Smith responded immediately. As soon as Dillon Gabriel made his comments about Shedeur Sanders, Smith delivered a clear, point-by-point critique that drew national attention across the NCAA media cycle. Dillon Gabriel has a reputation as a good quarterback, not a dominant one. He can post strong numbers against opponents like Tulsa, but his performance has been inconsistent when the stakes and competition rise to playoff level.
Well, those who produce get treated differently than those who don't. What he said echoes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment, because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be QB.
Dillon Gabriel is a capable quarterback, but not a standout. Even so, he chose to talk down to Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who has navigated constant scrutiny and pressure and still represents the future of a program that was struggling before he arrived. The comparison was weak. The criticism was unnecessary. Stephen A. Smith recognized that and dismantled Gabriel's argument with a clear, direct response.
How the Browns react to this, how the locker room reacts to this, how Shedeur reacts to this, because it was a clear shot at Shedeur. But let's say Dillon Gabriel's talking about the media. How could you be a brand new quarterback in the NFL and the first time you get behind a mic after your first game, you throw the media under the bus? That's arrogance.
Stephen A. Smith excels in moments like this. When Dillon Gabriel made his remarks about Shedeur Sanders, Smith responded with a focused, direct critique. He questioned Gabriel's standing to make that claim, noting that Gabriel has transferred between programs and has not been a Heisman finalist. Without theatrics, Smith laid out why Gabriel's resume doesn't justify taking public shots at Sanders. Smith's point was clear. Targeting Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback central to his program's future and consistently under intense scrutiny, was misplaced. Gabriel's criticism lacked the substance to support it, and Smith methodically showed why.
Content today on his 42nd I want you to be meaner birthday. That's number one. Number two, after the game, the Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said there was a mix-up in the routes and that players were in the area that they shouldn't have been.
Look at Stephen A's face. Look at Stephen A's
Look at his face. Stephen A.
Oh my Lord.
The strength of Stephen A. Smith's response was that he didn't just address Gabriel's remarks. He challenged the image around him. Dillon Gabriel often presents himself as an overlooked contender ready to surprise. But the reality is that his profile hasn't commanded broad attention. It's a clear reminder that not every opinion carries equal weight. In defending Shedeur Sanders, Stephen A. was direct and precise. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback. He is Deion Sanders' Sanders' son, which subjects him to scrutiny far beyond anything Gabriel has faced. Even under that pressure, Shedeur has maintained his composure, shown confidence, and delivered in key moments that helped revive a program many had written off.
Stupidity, all of it. I thought it was a clear shot at Shedeur due to the fact that his Oregon coach threw a shot at Coach Prime and Shedeur during their meeting at Colorado last year. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. Let's see what happens this week. I see a lot of the media talking about they think it was about the media and not about Shedeur. And I think that's a chess move.
For Dillon Gabriel to take shots at Shedeur Sanders was a miscalculation. Stephen A. Smith made the mismatch clear. Gabriel's attempt to shame Sanders was unnecessary and counterproductive. You don't target Deion Sanders' son when Deion has turned Colorado into primetime television. It underscored that Dillon Gabriel has often played with a chip on his shoulder because the spotlight hasn't followed him. He has been around long enough to compile numbers but not to earn broad respect. That's why going after Shedeur was misguided. Sanders, despite ups and downs, drives headlines. Gabriel's most notable headlines have been his transfers. Stephen A. Smith pressed that point without hesitation, challenging Gabriel's standing and leaving his argument looking like a forced throw that turns into a pick six.
You know what? Still needs to thank me a little bit more for that restaurant I treated him and his family to, because it was big time, and stop embarrassing me by going places and trying to use coupons. That's how pathetic he is. The point is that a pick six and a fumble is usually considered a bad day.
Stephen A. Smith didn't need to raise his voice to make the point. He presented Dillon Gabriel as a player whose talk outpaces his resume and defended Shedeur Sanders with clear comparisons. That's why he called Gabriel out so directly. The comparison wasn't just unfair, it was forced. Now look at Gabriel's record. The numbers are solid and he can win against average defenses, but the resume lacks defining markers. There's no sustained Heisman contention, no late season surge that reshaped the national picture, and no postseason moment that cements a legacy. The track record reflects steady production, not top-tier impact. That's the gap Smith underscored. Gabriel's criticism of Shedeur Sanders wasn't supported by what he has accomplished, while Sanders continues to carry a program under constant scrutiny.
Let's see some of them step up and make some plays out there.
Ain't no way.
Gabriel
Ain't no way. He's not built like that. No way.
And this one is picked off and going back the other way.
Oh my God, why did he stop playing?
Now it's a foot race. And that is that.
They told me bust out my AP, perfect timing. H-time, we about to get legendary. Shedeur started the next game, baby. Shout out Dillon though, you know what I'm saying? Bro, I love you, my heart. What am I bigger than cheese, bro? You know what I'm saying? But Shedeur got it.
Shedeur Sanders is a national brand who draws viewers for both performance and result. Dillon Gabriel's attempt to diminish him read as resentment. And Stephen A. Smith called out the insecurity and lack of awareness directly. Colorado under Deion Sanders is prime time, and Shedeur sits at the center of that spotlight. If Gabriel expected the sports world to agree while he took a shot at Shedeur, he misread the moment. Smith dismantled the argument and questioned the credibility behind it. Gabriel will move on. He'll keep playing, give interviews, and have fans, but this exchange will trail his media profile as a reminder of a misstep. It's a clear example of a resume that doesn't justify taking public aim at a quarterback carrying that level of scrutiny and responsibility.
For the Cleveland Browns preseason game today is that the way that some white folks watched Shedeur Sanders last week is the way that some black folks were watching Dillon Gabriel today. And it's not Dillon Gabriel for Dillon Gabriel's sake. Most folks don't have a problem with Dillon Gabriel. It's what he represents, which is the disrespect of a black person for no other apparent reason than they are a confident black person.
Dillon Gabriel thought he was aiming up. Instead, he was placed back among quarterbacks who are good but not great. Stephen A. Smith made the central point. Dillon Gabriel doesn't shape the conversation. Sports are about narrative as much as numbers, and Gabriel's story doesn't move the culture, while Shedeur Sanders does. Smith highlighted that contrast clearly. By the end, Gabriel's credibility had taken a measurable hit. The critique was decisive and sent a broader message to any player considering public shots at Shedeur Sanders. If you step into that debate, you will be held to a higher standard and your resume will be tested. Dillon Gabriel learned that the hard way.
I view things as I got time. I got time to be able to grow and mature, you know, and be able to understand the ins and outs of the defenses and be able to get the good insight from the vets in the room. So I look at it as, a plus. And whenever, it's time for me to play them.
Shedeur Sanders rolled into Browns camp and instantly made the whole practice feel like a recess pickup game. NFL vets suddenly looked like they'd forgotten the playbook and were just trying to keep up.
With that being said, I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that camp, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm ready.
He can sling it.
Ready to. I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Yep.
Talking about Njoku there?
Joku, Mike that, but once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
Right after Shedeur Sanders tightened his cleats and the Browns settled in for what they figured was a routine camp day, the whole vibe tilted sideways. No blazing comet, no UFO touching down at midfield, just a swagger-charged quarterback striding in like he'd crashed the wrong league and thought, yeah, I'll stick around and run this show. The Browns had no clue what storm was rolling in. You'd expect an NFL team to do a quick scout, maybe pull up a highlight reel or two, but nope. They greeted Shedeur with a shrug, only to watch him seize the field on snap one and run the whole operation like a seasoned pro.
First and foremost, he's been the best quarterback in camp. Now look, Joe Flacco ain't had many opportunities. There was a whole day I saw he didn't throw the ball at all. Here's my theory on the situation. They already know who's starting in the number 2 is. They already know. Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders is already locked up. You're missing the boat, people. You're missing the boat. Your boy, Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, they're fighting.
Shedeur didn't merely clock in, he hijacked the session. One moment he's loosening his arm, the next he's roasting veteran QBs like faded names on busted draft boards. Defensive coordinators everywhere had the same gut punch reaction. His pocket poise, straight disrespectful. His timing, psychic, and every pass left his hand like it was laser guided to its mark. While Shedeur Sanders was slicing up routes, the Browns secondary looked less like an NFL backfield and more like a gaggle of dads sprinting through a Saturday fun run. Big on enthusiasm, short on closing speed. Coaches fought the urge to slam the emergency horn. Players traded wide-eyed, "Are we serious?" stares, and someone even double-checked that a hidden camera crew wasn't about to pop out of the tunnel. But nope, this was pure Shedeur. Half cold-blooded surgeon, half highlight factory. He wasn't dropping a casual "I'm here," he was crafting a masterclass. From the first rep, the tempo changed. Shedeur Sanders accepted the snap with steady footwork, diagnosed the Browns' single high shell, and delivered a tight window seam route that forced the free safety to recover late. Throughout the period, he manipulated leverage with quick shoulder fakes, moved through full field progressions, and released on time from a balanced base, consistently putting the ball on his receiver's upfield shoulder. Cleveland's coverage struggled on multiple fronts. Safeties hesitated between deep half responsibilities and underneath support, creating voids at 15 to 20 yards. Cornerbacks and off-man were caught in trail position when Sanders used rhythm throws on 3-step drops, while those who tried press technique had their inside hand neutralized by his receivers' outside releases. Linebackers widened to match shallow crossers, leaving the middle hook unguarded for pivot routes and option digs. One corner attempted a line of scrimmage jam. Sanders immediately adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade, releasing the ball before the break and rendering the press ineffective. Over the session, he showcased pocket discipline, reclimbing to maintain throwing lanes rather than drifting, and finished with a series of anticipatory throws against cover 2 cloud, fitting vertical outs between the flat and deep half defenders. Sanders' combination of rapid post-snap processing, precise ball placement, and pocket efficiency exposed coverage mismatches at every level and highlighted communication gaps in the Browns secondary. By mid-session, the Browns defensive staff clearly recognized their calls were outmatched. Every adjustment, a roll to cover 6, a simulated pressure, a late rotate to 2 high, was neutralized once Shedeur Sanders confirmed the post-snap picture. Routes that had taken weeks to script were beaten by timing and location. Comeback set at 12 yards broke open before the corner's transition. Slot seam-outs dotted the void between the flat and deep half defender, and boundary receivers beat press with quick hand techniques, receiving retrieving the ball before the trail man could recover. Sanders' command was methodical. He used cadence to freeze plug blitzes, re-ID'd the mic when linebackers sugared the A-gaps, and maintained a firm base so he could reset and fire without resetting his feet. His receivers benefited from that rhythm. Top of the stem, eyes back. Ball delivered on their upfield shoulder, allowing immediate transition to YAC. The Browns front tried a late stunt to compress the pocket. Sanders climbed 2 steps, re-spotted the shallow crosser, and delivered in stride, turning a potential sack into a 20-yard gain. What stood out most was how little ramp-up Sanders needed. From his first series, he processed full field concepts at tempo, cycling through progression reads without hitching. The poise under interior pressure, consistency in ball placement, and ability to manipulate zone defenders left the Browns' coordinated disguise packages ineffective and forced them into static coverage by the end of the period. In short, Sanders' efficient mechanics, rapid processing, and anticipatory accuracy rendered Cleveland's defensive game plan ineffective at every level, from pre-snap disguise to post-snap spacing.
Imagine there's many people that think Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. And if the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what
listen,
they're
I've
doing.
been on every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dylan Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I-I'd be surprised. I just don't think.
Well, then it is a wasted pick because you took him in the top 100.
Yeah, but potentially.
Yeah.
May get away with it because of Shedeur.
An edge rusher chirped at Shedeur Sanders between snaps, hoping to shake his rhythm. On the very next play, Sanders answered with a 30-yard laser, a deep dig from the boundary side that split the single high safety and the trailing corner. He hit the top of a 5-step drop, kept a firm base, and delivered on time to the receiver's outside shoulder, turning what should have been a routine rep into a sudden change explosive. From that moment on, every coverage wrinkle the Browns tried, rotating from cover 3 to quarter half, flashing a Tampa 2 shell, mugging both A-gaps, was met with a precise counter. When corners pressed, Sanders adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade. When safeties widened, he checked to a glance post. When linebackers bailed, he found the running back on a delayed option out of the backfield. Even late simulated pressures couldn't move him off his spot. He simply climbed, reset his feet, and fired. As Cleveland's defenders rotated through checks, Sanders manipulated them with cadence and eye discipline. He froze weak side safeties long enough to create intermediate windows, then feathered the ball into those lanes before help could arrive. When the Browns finally dropped 7 and matched every route, Sanders tucked the ball and converted 2 separate 3rd and 6 situations on the ground, reminding everyone that his mobility is as calculated as his arm. By the end of the session, the defensive coordinator's call sheet looked obsolete. Sanders had neutralized blitz looks, exposed spacing issues in zone, and forced the unit into static base coverage just to survive the period. It wasn't a camp drill anymore. It was a clinic on timing, processing speed, and controlled aggression, delivered snap after snap by a quarterback who never needed a warm-up lap to own the field.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back. He can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyler said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
That's it.
I want to see what he can do with David Njoku. I want to see him with Junkins. I want to see him with the first running backs. If you are cooking, if you are beating down the doors with the 3s and 4s, guess what? You deserve more.
From the first team period on, Cleveland's secondary looked a step slow. A deep third safety hesitated on a post-snap rotation, leaving Shedeur Sanders free to climb the pocket and fire a 22-yard out that arrived before the defender could plant and drive. The supporting cast around him, players fighting for roster spots, not Pro Bowl invites, benefited from his command. Sanders used tempo to control the defensive front, altered protections at the line, and located throwing lanes so quickly that one receiver didn't register the catch until he crossed the goal line. As the Browns tried new personnel groups, coverage busts multiplied. Starters slipped out for hamstring stretches while rookies rotated in, only to find the ball arriving on their blind side before they'd completed a midpoint squeeze. On a later 3rd and long, Cleveland finally closed the interior rush lanes, compressing the pocket with 3 defenders. Sanders pivoted through the traffic, stepped into a narrow escape window, and, without resetting his shoulders, whipped a no-look pass to the boundary curl for a fresh set of downs. The throw turned a potential sack into an explosive play and left the coaching staff scrambling for answers.
The people who are fascinated by Shedeur for whatever reason, whether it's his play, I guess, last year was kind of fun. If you're just like a guy who grew up like loving Deion Sanders and passed that love on down to your kids, I can see why you're like that. The one thing I will give them is you're looking at this quarterback room. If you're a fan of Shedeur and say, why can't he go beat Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett? So I do understand that part of it, right? Because why not? Why couldn't he be the Brown starter in October or November?
That looks like a quarterback room where everyone will get a chance to start.
When he led college football in completion percentage and he threw almost 40 touchdowns for over 4,000 yards, how tall was he? Because they make it seem like he shrunk all of a sudden, RC. Oh, how lively was his arm? Because all I know is somebody did that. Somebody threw for over 4,000 yards, somebody threw for almost 40 touchdowns, and somebody led college football in completion percentage. Now, I'm trying to figure out, what I try to figure out all the time, Mel, is how a guy that hadn't played football in almost 5 months.
Shannon Sharpe has publicly defended Shedeur Sanders and criticized those questioning him. Sanders has earned higher recognition and some fans are responding negatively. Although there's debate about whether he belongs on a second team list, Sharpe maintains that Sanders' career is clearly ascending. Reactions on social media are mixed. Some users are angry, others are surprised, and a few say they anticipated this result. The conversation remains active. When reports confirmed that Shedeur Sanders had been elevated from second team to near top tier status, Shannon Sharpe issued an emphatic response. He delivered a detailed rebuttal to critics, underscoring why Sanders deserved the promotion and directly challenging those who doubted the decision.
I don't think that he was underprepared during these meetings. I don't believe any of these stories that he showed up arrogant and that he was bombing his interviews. I mean, you watch the film, he's on time, he's on point. You watch his interviews, he answers like a 10-year NFL veteran. Like, he's clearly dominating OTAs. It's every single day there's a new report of how well he's doing for the Browns in OTAs. And I mean, you can say what you want, it's just OTAs. Okay, if that's your new narrative, then he's doing exactly what he needs to be doing. He's on point, he's on time, he's getting the respect of his teammates, and he's making plays. So we're gonna see years down the line, something's gonna come out that I don't know what exactly it was, but something will come out.
Critics have been waiting for an opportunity to dismiss Sanders. They labeled him overrated, accused him of benefiting from nepotism, and claimed his profile came only from his last name and polished image. Within their own echo chamber, they cited every game in which he fell short of huge passing numbers as validation of their doubts. Since Sanders has begun receiving formal recognition, criticism has escalated. A wave of self-appointed analysts is dissecting his throwing mechanics and team role, and many online commentators now argue that his promotion reflects deeper problems within the sport. Shannon Sharpe rejected each criticism directed at Shedeur Sanders. During the broadcast, he turned a routine segment into a detailed examination, acting as presenter, interrogator, and fact-checker. Sharpe walked viewers through game film, season statistics, and scouting reports to show why Sanders merited his recent promotion. Whenever a panelist claimed Sanders had not earned the role, Sharpe countered with completion percentages, efficiency ratings under pressure, and documented late-game drives that changed outcomes. He stressed that the backlash was driven less by on-field evidence and more by reluctance to revise earlier opinions. Sharpe argued that critics were upset not because Sanders lacked qualifications, but because his progress contradicted their initial narrative. By the end of the discussion, Sharpe had moved past simple defense and reframed Sanders as a clear example of performance-based advancement, demonstrating that early predictions can be wrong.
Never heard of no Dylan Gabriel or Tyler Shock. What the hell is that? So how is Shedeur Sanders going behind them? I'll tell you how. Collusion. 4 different times they passed on him. How the hell does that happen? 4 rounds. It doesn't happen to a quarterback. We've never seen anything like this before. Shedeur Sanders with the watch. Shedeur Sanders with his bravado. Shedeur Sanders with this supposed arrogance or whatever.
Shedeur Sanders' advancement did not happen by chance. While detractors questioned his resume online, he continued to prepare, attend every practice, and deliver accurate throws under pressure. The contrast between his output and the complaints directed at him has been stark. Some critics even argued the selection committee was, quote, biased toward performance, as if rewarding strong play were improper. Rumors quickly followed. Certain commentators speculated that a public relations push from the Sanders family must have influenced voters, suggesting everything from coordinated media strategies to alleged favors for coaches. None of these theories addresses the basic point. Sanders earned his promotion through consistent production, poise in the pocket, precise ball placement, and efficient decision-making. Shannon Sharpe highlighted these facts during his response. He noted that Sanders' performance metrics justify the recognition and emphasized that resistance to the move stems more from prior prejudice than from substantive evaluation. For Sharpe, the goal was clear: present the data, challenge unfounded claims, and correct the narrative. The discussion, therefore, became a broader statement about acknowledging merit and abandoning outdated assumption.
Colin Cowherd defend college basketball coaches who have gotten a DUI, come to their defense and say they didn't need to be fired, that they deserve a second chance. But Shedeur Sanders drives 40 miles over the speed limit, gets a one-on-one ticket, and Colin Cowherd comes on his show today and says he's out on Shedeur Sanders. He's seen enough. He can't support him anymore. He can't be in the Shedeur Sanders camp because of the speeding ticket.
Shannon Sharpe addressed commentators who portray constant doubt as expertise. Those who discount strong performances with "we'll see" but declare bust after a single mistake. He noted their belief that progress only counts if an athlete visibly struggles. Sharpe's response was methodical rather than emotional. He presented evidence, cited statistics, and calmly refuted each claim. Following his remarks, several critics began revising or deleting earlier posts, recasting themselves as longtime supporters of Shedeur Sanders despite having questioned him for months. Sharpe insists on accountability, naming specific individuals and dates while requesting public acknowledgement of prior errors. He argues that analysts cannot spend months undermining a player's potential and then quietly adopt a supportive stance once the athlete succeeds.
These are serious, big-time, top-of-the-line playmakers that they have. If you can go 45 to 42 in the fourth quarter because your quarterback set the school record with 510 yards passing. He was flawless. Shedeur is big time. I didn't know for sure, will it translate to the next level of competition? Yes. It might translate to the next level of competition as he can play.
Critics who once claimed Shedeur Sanders was unprepared now hesitate to acknowledge their mistake. They resist retracting earlier comments and struggle to accept that an athlete can succeed without their approval. Sanders continues to share practice clips and game highlights without engaging the debate, while Shannon Sharpe documents every dismissive remark, ready to revisit them on national television. The disapproval did not slow Sanders. It underscored his progress and exposed the gap between perception and performance. As a result, the conversation has shifted. Analysts who doubted him now describe him as undervalued and publish detailed evaluations of his mechanics and game management, suggesting long-standing familiarity with his career. In a matter of weeks, critics have recast themselves as advocates, demonstrating how quickly opinion can change when consistent results leave little room for doubt. Shannon Sharpe signaled that his commentary is not over. He considers Sanders' advancement a positive outcome for every athlete who has been overlooked or criticized for having confidence. Sharpe stressed that analysts do not have the authority to determine who deserves recognition based on personal preference. The reaction to Sanders' promotion, he argued, revealed how quickly opinions can shift once results are undeniable. Sharpe pointed out that many vocal critics became quiet when confronted with objective performance data. This exchange, Sharpe insisted, reached beyond defending a single quarterback. It challenged the practice of dismissing achievements that do not fit familiar narratives. He reminded viewers that success does not require external approval and that consistent talent will surface despite online commentary intended to minimize it. While critics reconsider their positions, Sharpe remains steady, assigning credit to the athlete and allowing the scoreboard to confirm the argument. In his view, the statistics speak clearly enough. Sharpe also emphasized that the intensity of the backlash must be placed in context. College football is a volatile environment where unexpected outcomes are common. Therefore, declaring failure based on incomplete evidence only weakens the credibility of sports analysis. The discussion underscored the need for measured evaluation rather than reactive judgment.
Zach Jackson and him and everybody else that we talked to have said that Shedeur looks good. He looks really good.
Yes.
He looks better. And we got Zach that say Dylan Gabriel ain't even an NFL quarterback.
It's true.
So how is it that this man can't get a rep with the ones, but that non-NFL quarterback can?
We all
what
agree
sense
with that.
does that make?
Some observers now claim that recognizing Shedeur Sanders' strong performance undermines football's traditional standards, even though they previously argued he received coverage only because of his father. Faced with Sanders' current statistics, those critics are searching for explanations that fit their earlier narrative. The data have always been clear. Their earlier objections ignored that fact. Shannon Sharpe is openly highlighting this reversal, comparing past negative remarks with Sanders' recent 400-yard games to demonstrate the gap between criticism and evidence. Sharpe did not force these commentators to backtrack. He simply displayed their earlier claims alongside Sanders' results, allowing the contrast to speak for itself.
You can't fire the owner because he can't fire himself. Yeah, someone's head's going to roll, unfortunately, in this situation. And it's probably Stefanski and Barry.
I saw on The Athletic.
I don't think that's fair, by the way. Stefanski, that part.
I agree. I was saying the other day on my podcast that Barry should be fired. And I said I wouldn't fire Stefanski, but a couple of people made the point of saying, well, if you fire the GM, you got to give him a chance to hire his own coach, which is fair.
That's true.
So I would fire Barry. I would hire a new GM. If that GM thinks Kevin Stefanski's a good coach, wants to stick with him.
The situation in Cleveland has escalated with the NFL. Sources indicate GM Andrew Barry is prepared to move on from head coach Kevin Stefanski if he refuses to elevate Shedeur Sanders. The Browns are weighing a major quarterback change. Leadership appears to be aligning behind Sanders and pushing for immediate action. This is a high-stakes decision about control and the team's direction.
I think it's unfair for me to comment in I guess, maybe on behalf of the industry. All I can say is this, the time that we spent with Shedeur, and what he's done throughout his college career is impressive. He's an impressive young man. He's a really good quarterback. Sometimes, fit comes into play. And I'd also say this, there are 4 more rounds of the draft. And then maybe lastly, it's less about where you get picked and what you do after you get picked. That's really the most important thing. Getting to know him over the course of the spring, he has a ton of resolve.
Andrew Barry appears to be at a breaking point. Pressure from fans and within the organization to play Shedeur Sanders is intensifying. Barry is pushing for a move towards Sanders, while head coach Kevin Stefanski remains cautious about altering the depth chart. The divide is clear. One side wants acceleration, the other a measured rollout. The organization is under heavy scrutiny, and the focus has shifted to when, not if, Sanders sees the field.
Has the 4th highest odds of any head coach this season to be fired. He's clearly on the hot seat. It's been a discussion for really a couple years now, dating back to last season's 3-win season. And he's always had kind of hot and cold seasons. And now the sports books are saying he's 4th on the list. Number 1 is Mike McDaniel of the Miami Dolphins, Brian Dable of the Giants at 2, Shane Steichen at 3, and there is Kevin Stefanski plus 650 to be fired.
This has moved beyond tension to outright stubbornness. Rather than elevating Shedeur Sanders, the staff has chosen Dillon Gabriel. The current depth chart looks less like a forward plan and more like resistance to change. Fans have been clear about who they expect to see, yet the organization keeps delaying. Every week without a real evaluation of Sanders slows development and blurs accountability. Cleveland is choosing a conservative approach when a decisive decision is needed, sending a message of uncertainty to both the locker room and the city.
Now being the 3rd string quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, was that so much was made out of unbelievable. He actually made the team as the 3rd string quarterback. Like that was a big deal. Like that was somewhat of a surprise to a lot of people. He should have been the 1st pick in the draft.
Kevin Stefanski appears to be doubling down to validate his approach. Despite sustained demand from Browns fans to see Shedeur Sanders reflected in chants, merchandise, and constant discussion, he continues to keep Dillon Gabriel in front on the depth chart. The decision functions as an assertion of control rather than a response to momentum. Even with clear signals from the fan base, Stefanski is staying with Gabriel and delaying a full evaluation of Sanders. It is a deliberate choice to maintain his plan and pacing, not to accelerate change. Cleveland is prioritizing continuity over recalibration, keeping any transition to Sanders on hold.
But yeah, I mean, the Browns are in a tough spot. They have wasted. You traded a ton of high draft capital to get Deshaun Watson. You've gotten nothing out of Deshaun Watson and missed an opportunity. Like, who knows who they would have drafted? Now, maybe they would have screwed up those picks and the Browns would still be in bad shape.
Andrew Berry is likely frustrated watching Dillon Gabriel default to conservative throws while the offense stalls. From a football perspective, this appears to be the hill Kevin Stefanski is choosing to stand on. Keeping Gabriel ahead of Shedeur Sanders has limited the unit's explosiveness and prevented a full evaluation of a higher ceiling option. Drives end quickly, field position flips, and momentum is lost while Sanders remains on the sideline. Fan patience is wearing thin. Each ineffective series intensifies criticism and shifts scrutiny toward the coaching staff's criteria for the depth chart. With every additional snap for Gabriel, the decision reads less like an open competition and more like rigid adherence to a plan that isn't producing results. The optics are clear. A dynamic quarterback sits while a cautious approach keeps the offense in neutral. If this continues, accountability questions will grow inside and outside the building. What performance benchmarks keep Gabriel ahead of Sanders? When will Sanders receive first-team reps in live situations to allow a fair comparison? The front office must decide whether to preserve continuity or pivot toward a timely assessment of Sanders. The longer the current approach stays in place, the more it signals stubbornness rather than adaptation, and the more pressure mounts to realign the plan with on-field output.
I honestly see it happening if the Browns lose a bunch of games. Like if they get 5 wins or less, I see the report coming out now that Stefanski will be fired. I don't want it to happen. I want the Browns to be good, win a bunch of games. I think that they're going to be a team that is slept on and can at least get 7 wins, which is why if they don't, I see Stefanski getting all the blame for that, and there'll be a new coach in Cleveland. Because their players, to me, are there once again. We've talked about the incredible rookie class.
The approach in Cleveland lacks consistency. One week, Andrew Berry signals he wants Shedeur Sanders on the field. The next, Dillon Gabriel gets the reps and the plan stays conservative. Through it all, Kevin Stefanski shows limited urgency despite pressure on his job security. Fans are asking for an offense that can push the ball, change field position, and produce points. Instead, the unit leans on short throws and cautious sequencing. Gabriel's play keeps the ceiling low and momentum static, while a full evaluation of Sanders is postponed. The result is growing frustration and a clear disconnect between the front office, coaching staff, and expectations in the stadium.
The NFL tried to teach him and his father a lesson. You don't act like that. You don't talk like that before a draft. We'll show you how our game is played. We will watch you plummet all the way. I think he would have gone undrafted except for that owner in Cleveland. And he is the key to everything because he is something of an against the grain maverick owner. He's kind of a wannabe Jerry.
Fan speculation is growing. Some believe Kevin Stefanski lacks confidence in Shedeur Sanders. Others think he's prioritizing Dillon Gabriel for reasons unrelated to performance. A more extreme view claims Stefanski is manipulating outcomes to secure a buyout. Whatever the motive, the risk is clear. This approach is straining his relationship with GM Andrew Berry and alienating the fan base. Pressure is rising, Berry's patience is running out, and supporters have shifted from requests to demands. If the current plan continues, calls for a change in quarterback and accountability will intensify.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7. They're throwing dimes. In practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, then the the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first team guys. Then they throw Dylan Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dylan always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised. When you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback, you do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible Plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
Have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.